All right, hello. We are at day 33, 365 days to racial change. My name is Tomlins Nyback. Thanks for tuning in once again to our year-long trek through issues of being black in America, racism, white privilege, white domination, and surviving in this country with so much opulence, wealth, and resources, to name a few things. To get right to it, we're informed by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. Please get his books. I've read 3 of his, and we reference these books quite often. One is a Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. We're going to be referencing this book today. Another great work of his is Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Economic Power, Justice, things of that nature. And finally, I read his book, Powernomics, National Plan to Empower Black America. We referenced all 3 of those books throughout this whole series, this whole year on racial change. And we also look at Uncle Tom's Cabin, take a fictional look, an account of slavery and white power in America as well. Also behind me, you'll see the hashtag #US2. You can plug into that community, black community, black issues, things of that nature. Also, there's another community online called Black Enough, BLAGG Enough. I gotta learn how to spell that one of these days to get that to you properly. But listen, watch some videos of Dr. Anderson. See if, like me, you'll be inspired, to resist, maybe not being outwardly making videos, but to at least come to a point where you're aware. Like, I'm aware that when I'm shopping at Walmart or any of the wall stores, that it's nothing but a Chinese outlet. Does America make any convenient stuff anymore? Things like that have happened to me in these past 30 days and some change. And I hope they happen to you as well. Today we're coming out of a Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. And we're looking at question 37. We're not going sequentially through the book or anything like that. I just opened the book because it's all relevant. We're looking at 400 years of issues to deal with. So anything out of these books, sometimes I find things online. I've started a first of the month series to look at Black First. So things like that. So we're all over the map because it's just too much information to settle on one thing. We could take one kernel, the Freedmen's Bank, doctrine of unequal exchange, battery of laws enacted, Jim Crow, things like that. We could spend a whole year on any one of those subjects. But I want people to be inundated, feel surrounded by white influence and the way whites have taken advantage and have not shared properly. Also, I'm looking at, does the slave mind persist? Does the black slave mind persist into the 21st century? Does white domination, privilege, and entitlement persist into the 21st century from those late 1500s, 1600s, early slavery to now? And also getting blacks to play the economic game in America correctly. It's one thing to say that group was not fair, but there's a system in place, and we've got to get with working with that system, kind of finding a way to catch whites at their own game, so to speak. So today the question is, it's question 37 on page 116 are blacks too race conscious? And before we say a yay or nay, I try not to give concrete answers. I just want to put information and evidence out there about these things. So, just to tell you a quick story about my job. Just in contemporary times, this young white man he left the job, but then the grass wasn't greener wherever he went, and so now he's back. And before he left, he was kind of in position, and he's palsy-wowsy with management and things like that. So when he came back, they kind of put him back in place. But in his absence, I took over some of his duties, and I like what I do. I like the hours I have. A lot of things happen in his absence, And so last night he says, tries to hint to me that, he'd like my hours and my spot and things like that, and it just messed my whole evening up. And I'm going back and forth, and I'm contemplating, what impact, what is this more of white domination and entitlement coming at me, a black person, feeling conditioned to be vulnerable, to acquiesce, to be non-threatening to the white establishment. Very, very real issues and things to think about, which is, one of my biggest two questions. These may be the biggest two questions to maybe form a thesis or something about the black slave mind, white mind of entitlement and privilege, and also playing the game properly, economically and politically in America. So, this question, I just opened the book, I stumbled onto it. Is this little dynamic at work a a demonstration of white domination meeting black vulnerability? Because I didn't live an empowered life. I'm not very uppity or mouthy or things like that. I have to process things, and I find that I'm sequestered sometimes and speaking my mind and getting my needs met. All these white terms, that he would even come at me in that way is telling about his position. And I'm glad I did feel good. I just told him no, and I didn't give any explanation. I didn't tell him why I like this position or why he shouldn't be asking me. I didn't get confrontational and all that. But I did. Just saying no was a moment of growth for me, because I'm a blabbermouth with my business, and I think that's another slave attribute, telling the master all this business and stuff, just get always entertaining massa and stuff like that. So I was glad I just gave him a polite no, and I went on about my business. I was up my head all night about it, but that was good there. But see, now I'm afraid, okay, now he's buddies with the management and things like that. So that dynamic's going on. I'm not really worried about it. If the push comes to shove, I think I know how to articulate. But America's just not going to get too far away from the reality of some of these things until we can be open about them. But the 60s was not the answer. That was just a knock on the door. That brought us to the foot of Dr. King's mountain, but it wasn't the answer. So let's get into some of Dr. Anderson's commentary here. He hates social integration and civil rights. He doesn't say that explicitly, but I can tell it puts a bad taste in his mouth because social integration and civil rights diluted the black message. It brought along all these other groups, the Spanish, Hispanics, the even Asians, homosexuals, um, all kinds of groups and people came along because it was like this big group hug of oppressed people at the hands of a white male power, and that's not the essence of a liberating black message. Okay, and that's that's our problem as blacks from not being exclusive. Every other group is exclusive. Arabs are exclusive. Go to Detroit. Hispanics are exclusive. When the weather breaks, go to the park on a Sunday afternoon. That's where they're at together. Asians are exclusive. They do it economically. They come into the neighborhoods, set up shop, take out resources, and whites just go without saying. So this social integration, civil rights thing, I think it's ran its course, but we need to get back to our exclusivity. We talked yesterday about C.R. Patterson and Sons and how because of the lack of vertical integration, his business was destined to fail. He was just, you see it in the brief notes that I wrote, that company was just a big time consumer, an organized consumer business. I don't know what to say, but it's not a business that was going to compete with Ford or GM, uh, partially because there was no vertical integration. It was not fed by other black businesses to supply and make for those parts to make those Patterson vehicles. So that's a big problem with social integration and all that. Um, we're seeing a resurgence, I guess, in part. I'm not as connected with the black community maybe as I'd like to. I don't know. I'm busy now, but going through my own little changes in my own little world, which is another issue. The other groups have some organization. There, there's peace and home life and things like. There's more. Well, there's less they navigate than black folks. So that's a problem. So I'm later in life, so I'm playing a lot of catch up lately from a lot of things I missed coming up. Okay. Um, we do, so we, us blacks, we get our little spurts of unity if we can only sustain and maintain that kind of thing. But there are unities usually followed by dysfunction. Even when I watch the 60s documentaries, um, and you see these big organizations coming up, the Nation of Islam, SNCC, Dr. King's work, and all this stuff. And then, as soon as they come together and stuff, there's all this infighting and stuff going on between black folks. I was like, man, like, did you come all the way here just to keep fighting? Now you want to fight face to face. Okay, I get it. Uh, and then here's another issue with social integration and civil rights is that before that there were those issues because blacks wanted to kind of cross the line, drink out of the fountain they wanted to, and all that. But on the flip side, the good side, the blacks had their own churches, sports teams. We had our own economy going, our own politics on the way. I'm sure was going to be an outgrowth of that. So that's actually a good byproduct of Jim Crow and semi-slavery segregation is that blacks did have that. which is what Asians, Hispanics, whites, Arabs practice. Okay. Um, some figures in this question back in about 1915 to 1935, just to note some black figures. These are all male, but I'm sure there's plenty of black women. W.B. Du Bois, calling for black politics. Marcus Garvey, economics. Carter G. Woodson, culture and education. And Elijah Muhammad, uh, for a black nation. And you can go on, Harlem Renaissance and things like that in place. Um, but black folks just are determined to miss the point, keep missing the point. And I guess when I broach the subject and I try to get people to understand my viewpoint, where I'm coming from, who it is or what it is I'm reading, what's influencing my life now, it's breaking down into the minutia of the doing and the stuff like that. That's all the window dressing. What we need is a liberated black mind, a liberated black attitude. Something that's not looking over our shoulder or looking up and getting permission first before we move. There's a bus. There's a plaque advertisement on a bus for a convenience store. And on this advertisement, it's an Asian man standing in front of a black man. The black man, he's got his hands folded like this. He's trying to look so pleasant and non-threatening in the photo. And I hate that photo. It's sickening because white folks have guns, whips, nooses, and stuff. I just saw a little documentary piece about the Native Americans and how often the Native American men go off to fight and stuff, and that their villages left unprotected, and white armies would come and slaughter the women and children and things like that. This white man is just crazy for this kind of stuff. Some of them, and it's really sad. So seeing a black man, oh, he's so pleasant and he's non-threatening. Kind of you picture him like a Steve Harvey figure, doing Family Feud type thing. It's like, dude, I'm not saying be all militaristic and militant and stuff like the Black Panthers and Black Power. Some of that extremism, I'm not really for that either. I'm saying, when can we walk down the street as who we are in the world and stop putting on masks and folding our hands, and not speaking our mind at some type of employment inquisition, and always feeling like we have to be underneath. That's the prevailing attitude of the black mind, the white privilege that goes on in this country. So we're always accommodating there. So we need to be more race conscious, definitely, without a doubt. Whites never gave up their race consciousness. And let's take that C.R. Patterson example. His company had to kind of take a more backwards position, get out of building the engine and the frames and the axles, suspension, and so they built, the chassis on top, and eventually became buses. Then they actually moved, but they're being a black-owned business, they could not move and breathe as freely, as successfully as the white businesses. They didn't have a customer base to sustain them. I'm sure they were economically quarantined wherever they are, and the business eventually failed. Okay, so those are just some more of the issues. Like, so if blacks collectively become race conscious, there'll be some changes. There'll have to be then, because then we're unified. We're not just copycat, dark white people trying to make it in the world. We are our own people, which we should be anyway. So, if Dr. Anderson finishes up with politics, and it'd be so nice if we got together, had our own political party, or, withdraw from both major parties, and, we can't, we don't command, I guess, the numbers right now to really have a say. Actually, the Hispanic population doing the right thing, getting into politics and stuff as they grow. You're going to see all these groups as they grow, as their numbers increase, as they ethno-aggregate and, you know, circulate resources among themselves through ethno-aggregation and vertical integration. You'll see them getting more and more into politics, especially in their wherever space they're at. That's where they started. Ask the Cubans in South Florida is what they did, through their language and just bringing their numbers in and just building that community and just edging out those groups who are already marginalized, especially the blacks. So they have to deal with that. So if blacks come together politically and let both Democrats and Republicans know that we're going to come collectively, if we would do that, then we would start turning some heads and making some change. Dr. Anderson shows the flip flop between blacks and whites, Republicans and Democrats. Blacks originally were supported the Republican Party. When that happened, you had the white flight away from the Republican Party. So the blacks go following the whites to the Democratic Party. So you have the white flight back to the Republican Party. See it in economics, politics, communities, physical spaces, things like that. There's no consistent sense of a want or need for equality anywhere in the space. Whites want that segregation, and blacks keep trying to link up and come along and be with them. We've been tricked, duped. We have this illusion that the United States is a colorblind and inclusive nation and things like that. It's just not. It's just not. And thanks. I'm so grateful to have stumbled on to Dr. Anderson's work. So that's today's little clip there. A few minutes shorter than most, but I'm not. We're looking for quality, not just putting noise out there. So, black race consciousness today. Should we be? Is my interactions at work? Is there black-white dynamic going on there that I need to be more present for? Even if it's not an explicit activity, white or black, but when I have access to kind of the inner sanctum of my work area because of my position. So I'll see when I see three white managers with their own offices, their own private spaces in the hallway talking is like, wow, that's heavy duty right there. Do they feel good that they're white in that collective right there? What they if the roles were reversed, what is a white man's perception if he saw three blacks gathered um, there in the space, just chit chatting in the hallway? You know. So race is a part. Race, I use race now. Race fills in the gaps for a lot of my questions, apprehensions, fears that I encounter out in the world. It makes sense when I inject race into the equation. So now I know I'm not crazy anymore. I used to feel bad. It's like, what is wrong here? I don't get it. But now I get it. Now I get it. And part of my challenge is keeping my head cool and not snapping and when I really want to. So hey, listen, let's get on with our day and be aware of race. See if we can, with blacks, if we can just do a little something to bring blacks closer together racially. My name is Tom Lynn's Nyback. That's 365 Days to Racial Change. I'll see you again real soon.